Welcome once again today to the 10th annual REBEC conference. We're going to discuss how to build sufficient hotels at this panel. And I'm quite happy that I can present to you guests, architects who are very experienced with the hotel industry and hotel architecture. Mr. Patrick Reardon from Reardon Smith Architects, Executive Chairman. Ms. Jelena Nikic from Lindner. Mr. Oliver Masabni from Oliver Masabni Architects GmbH, and Mr. Zoran Balog from Horvat HTL and other companies that he has. The question is, you all are already for quite some time in this line of architectural business, dealing with hotel projects and hotel managers, hotel owners. Yeah. The question is, how can you influence the investors to improve their own I se čuje ako... Aha, izvinite, ja nisam dobro. Okay, sorry, I didn't know. I thought that I have to keep it here. Okay, I didn't know that you can hear me. Sorry. The question is, how can an architect influence an investor to sometimes undertake changes in his own functioning schematic to improve the hotel functioning and the cost of the hotel? I know that there is often very little freedom with big hotel chains for the architects to develop the design, because many guidelines have to be followed that are developed already in the hotel chains. So I would like to start with this question: how can an architect influence the improvement and also a sustainable hotel through the design?
Me?
Whoever wants, please.
Is this working?
Apparently, yes.
I think the first and most important thing is that you have to convince everyone, be it operator, developer, financier, whatever, that you know what you're doing. And that takes experience. I think all large chains have their particular standards and rules. In my long experience, and I've been doing this since 1971, all the big chains think that their standards and rules are precious and unique. They're not. They're all very much the same. It's a question of how you interpret them and how you put those bits of the jigsaw together. If you could produce a scheme, and I'd like to make one point of correction, we certainly we want to be more involved before the schematic stage. We want to do the schematics. If you can convince all of the people that look at this and make a judgment on what you do, that you do know what you're doing and it is going to work, then that's the major battle won. I think, and this is rather radical, in terms of a successful hotel, I think design and architecture come third, fourth, or fifth. I think the first thing is they've got to work. Therefore, those that produce the concept have to know where all the bits go and how they work. And that's particularly important in a renovation where you have an existing building and an existing envelope, because in a renovation, if you do something up here, it will affect something down here. So the simple answer to the question is convince people you know what you're doing. Others may have a different view. Yeah.
Now let's hear them. Who would like to take the next?
I can
Mr.
continue. Patrick, you have probably more experience on operator who are internationally, who have a big standard books and by the books, and probably as architects stuck with those standards, they have less possibility actually to move on. But my experience range, most of my experience range with is in Croatia on the coastal hotels. We did 10 or 12 hotels during the last 10 years. None of them was less than 15,000, 16,000 square meters. So it's a huge renovations, almost total, each of them was a total renovation. And on the contrary, we had owners and operators which are not international. So the operator was generated from the socialist time, you know, the company, the hotel company. And the owners, this is a new catch, is actually to this point a Chilean company, which is actually, you know, owning everything, including the hotels. Mm-hmm. This is one of the biggest. They have, amount of the hotel, I can tell you, 28, 30 hotels in Istria, in the northern part, and then 8 or 9 hotels in Dubrovnik, you know, range from 4 to 5 stars. So now you're getting investor, actually, an operator who do have some standards. We have a national standards in every classification, but they don't have they have very different hotels, so they didn't establish kind of standards. So talk to them is actually like who is guiding whom. They are giving us architect's brief, what to do. We are giving them the standards and etc. But in this situation, we have to talk to them. We have to explain it. That's the question that the colleague just said. Because further things, they don't know how to read the plans, you know. And that's the first thing. The second thing is they are very focused on design, you know. If you're calculating that the furniture, most of the furniture in design, including the carpets or whatever, walls, is actually from 15 to 20% of investment, you know. It's unimportant how it's going to look. Everybody is entitled to make a comment on this, you know. Everybody thinks that that's important for the hotel. And 70% of the hotel, actually, is back house and, you know, technology, in which, of course, first of all, you have to be very functional, organizational, you are very operational, and you have to introduce, of course, also the infrastructure, the new infrastructure, the system. You have to explain them. So I have a lot of experience actually teaching them how to do it. Above all, I'm also consultant for spatial planning and, you know, for the master plans of the hospitality, because my company was focused on the hospitality architecture. And we are doing the whole contract with the, of course, when we are taking the plans, we are taking as a general contract, you know. And we see a great possibility to teach them, actually, those operators that doesn't have experience, how to do it, mm-hmm. You know. Even up to this point where they have missed the positioning of the hotel. And I can tell you one good example. We were doing a hotel in Dubrovnik, 4+ star, and we did the project, and everybody was satisfied except the architect, you know, because at the end I saw the figure per room, we have 110 square meters. So I said, guys, something is wrong. No. We know what we are doing. It's a Dubrovnik, it's a nice sea coast. And we made a whole project. Can you imagine tender documentation and everything they paid? And the owners from Chile saw this and he said, no way. We said, what? No way, it's not payable. So we did a complete other project and they asked me what to do. I said, guys, raise the rooms. You have 3 restaurants on 142 rooms. That's not feasible.
Stupid.
It's so stupid. Huge fitness area, whatever. You know. And we turned around. But they turned around. They paid another project completely from the scratch, and I put it instead of 140 rooms, 170 rooms, and I reduced to 1 restaurant and a small area. We made a project. We made construction and everything. And now, after 2 years, they are saying, I'm asking them, how is hotel going? They're saying, it's flying. I said, why? They said, because we did it perfect, positioning and everything. So you can imagine they reduced the return on the investment for 3 years earlier. So it's a actually a story of education on the both sides. We are keeping a lot, as an architect, a lot of technical information on feasibility, on maintenance, and all other things. It's not stupid to have a central system. You know, as an architect, you have to know not only design, but you have to know a lot of technical things, and yeah, you have to be an architect who is doing a functional building,
engineer.
not the building with architecture.
Yes.
And that's very responsible in a way to our investors.
So you generally agree with Mr. Reardon? You
Yeah.
have to be wiser and cleverer and to
Yeah.
convince them. Mr. Massam, what would you say to this subject? I will keep the lady as the last, not the least one, but the last since we started like that, to make the point at the end on this subject.
I agree with the two gentlemen. I think that it's important to know who is the investor. If it's a professional investor, so there's much more, let's say, less to decide how many
Rooms.
restaurants. And,
Rooms,
so it's not the job of the architect to decide about positioning and, let's say, space
Allocation,
should be done by consultants. So if it's a private investor, he like to give this to the architect and then to complain that it's not market-oriented, and the architect in general don't know the market, and it's not market orientation. So he needs a step between to get a clear
Consulting.
concept and consultancy. So it's very often not done. So the professional investor never do this. So he have a clear picture what to do and gives a clear picture to the architect, and then they can work in general. So it depends on the investor and the professionality of the investor. First step, and then, of course, to find the right architect who develop according to the figures. It's the next step, and very often it's architects without experience in the hotel business, which are taken, and then they need consultancy and the know-how from somebody who already did some hotels and know about the 70%, not to do them in the wrong way. And if it's working together, then it can be successful at the end. That's my opinion.
I think you were more or less coming to the same with Ms. Nikic. Now, what would you say from your own experience and experience of the Linde company, as much as you can represent it, how do you see this particular issue?
Thank you. Having in mind that company Linde is actually engineering and construction company, I think it's good that you know our background. And now we're actually branching into design regarding this luxury resort we're designing. We've just begun designing on the Montenegrin coast. Our case is rather special because we're working for an international hotel company called Auberge, which is similar to boutique hotels. And having this in mind, we don't really need to follow some strict rules because we've never been delivered the hotel standards. So this is actually the opposite of what Mr. Reardon has been talking about. Not having to comply with strict standards gives us so much freedom, but also it's a huge liability. Because on the other hand, as future constructors of this property, we have a budget that we have to maintain. And in our case, it's like dancing on a rope, stretched between budget and inspiration.
Okay. Well, thank you. My personal experience, I have been working concerning the hotels only with a professional hotel developer. With them, you get a huge book of guidelines that you cannot walk away easily from, especially if you're younger or a smaller office. They do not allow any critics or comments. They want it done quickly, in a very short time, and for the planned investment amount. because the money costs. The money is coming from the credit lines. Each day has its own cost, value, and there is no time to lose. I know we have built not a small hotel in Vienna for 1.25 of a year, including planning and building. It was a Hotel Wimberger. It was a nightmare for the project office, for the architectural office. We managed it, but it wasn't an easy job. We have now got confronted two sides. On one side, working with the professional hotel developers. On the other side, this hotel group that you're working, that is a hotel group that has already its own hotels. How come that you do not have the guidelines and that you have open hands to do it actually?
Well, it's...
Are you so trustworthy
It's derived from the philosophy of this hotel chain.
Nice.
Because they are actually top of the line of boutique hotels that strive to have so different hotels all over the world that they don't want to have specific guidelines to be
Okay.
followed.
Good for them.
Yeah, that's good.
It's something really special, and I'm very glad to be involved in such a project. We all are, because also at the same time we are the company who's also pre-financing this project, which is putting us in a very difficult position of spending our own money and designing to meet a strict budget, and not having we would have been actually glad to have standards to follow, but not having the standards gives us, as I mentioned, the freedom to explore. And I think Mr. Oliver mentioned that Masabni, excuse me, mentioned the market. There's no such market in Montenegro regarding high-end luxury resorts who offer an entire lifestyle.
Porto Montenegro,
Well,
perhaps,
it's
which we did.
yes, and for the public, which company Linda executed in part. So we are very connected regarding the Porto Montenegro. But Porto Montenegro is specific because it's in a town. It's a town inside a town.
It was a town that was created from nothing.
Yeah.
Inside Tivat town.
Next to Tivat.
Next to Tivat town, yes. Opposite to it, opposite the sea, there's this peninsula called Luštica, and it's wilderness. At this moment, you can hardly reach it with a car, and it's untouched, and the views are unprecedented. And this type of resort, I think, at least in Montenegro, still doesn't exist. Compared to your experience, for example, we have a chunk of time to do it. We have 4 years
Wow.
to design it, execute it.
Wow.
For design itself, it's 1.5 years.
Nice.
I think
Nice.
everybody would like to be in a position that we are. Investing, designing, and building. It's really something that we are so happy to do. But going back to your question, how is it working without standards? It's very difficult. We have to guide ourselves. We actually, as colleague Balog mentioned, we have to educate the client at some points in terms of operating locally, operating Montenegro, communicating with municipalities, which is a part of design scope for hotels, which is easily overlooked and is usually done by some other company, as Mr. Masabni mentioned. But in this case, we are very, very involved with procuring all legal documents and working, knowing how it is to work in Montenegro gives us some special pluses in eyes of the investor, because we are from Serbia and Montenegro is very close, and already working there, we have some background knowledge. But how it will all end up, I think, is subject to some future conference that we will attend in a year or two.
Well, we can only hope that you will be able to charge adequately for your pre-investment, and to keep our fingers crossed. Mr. Reardon,
Could I just make a point? May I
please.
interrupt? Sorry.
I just wanted to ask you something, but please go ahead.
Just a point on this working without standards stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important for those architects and indeed other professionals who are seeing the attraction of the hotel and leisure industry to practice their craft. It all comes down to experience. If there are two strands to the point I want to make. The first is, if you know enough, even if you're given volumes of standards, if you know enough and your reputation in the business is sufficiently strong, that reputation gives you the ability to debate issues with companies that have masses of standards. Someone who comes into London, for example, that's the easiest one for me because that's where we work, who's never been built in London before, comes into our first meeting with a pile of Bibles. They've never built in London, they don't understand London, they don't know what the kind of local situation is like. I'm thinking of one particular Chinese client with whom we're working in London, and all they wanted to do was replicate what they did in suburban China. But they want a 6-star luxury hotel. And it took me a long time to persuade them, to convince them that we knew what we were talking about, and that, in fact, in a 6-star luxury hotel in London, being one of the centres of the world, escalators are not a good idea, because people don't like them. You can't imagine people at the Savoy, another one of our projects, going up on escalators. And that just didn't come into their consciousness. And the other thing that I want to mention, I don't want to puff on about the projects that we've done, but there's one very important fact that has a link to the point I'm trying to make. We have the great good fortune, honour, to be working on what the hotel industry considers as the most important hotel project in the world, which is the conversion of what currently is the American Embassy in Grosvenor Square into a hotel. I was offered a seat, the current owners are Qatari DR, I was offered a seat on the Hotel Operation Selection Committee, long before the operator was selected. And I was told quite firmly, you have an opinion, but you don't have a vote. So I sat for 18 months on the panel, and we started with 12 potential high-class. The only brief we were given by Qatari DR was, this has got to be the best hotel in the world. That's it. No other brief. So we started with 12, and we went to 8, to 6, to 4, to 3. And in that process, we developed a kind of, I hate to use the word generic, a generic concept for the best hotel in the world, which all of the participating contestants in the operational selection validated as being fit for purpose. Now, each one of them would want to have their own little idiosyncrasies and change little bits here and there, but fundamentally, everything that we did fitted the bill for all of them. And that was simply, I'm not saying that's brilliant, it's simply based on experience and doing the job. The short list of 3 was sent to Doha before Christmas, and we got the answer 2 months ago that the head man in Doha had selected a 4th. So there was 18 months of dedicated forensic work examining all these wonderful companies, all of that. Okay, well, that's, if your income is so many billion pounds a day, fine, you can do that. I don't, whatever. We just want an operator.
You actually fit more or less to the question that I wanted to ask you. Now, the gentleman's on the other side of the table, let's call this the other side of the table, on the other table,
okay.
have mentioned more or less that you, and as you did also partly, that you have to know what you're doing to be able to handle the matter and approach the investor or a hotel management to persuade them. Mm-hmm. It's a question of the technology of the hotel. How does a hotel functions? Also, what are its heartbeats, its veins, its arteries, the machine installations, technical installations. I had a short chat with Mr. Balog before we started about it. All of that influences the price majorly. The new technologies, new systems, how much are the hotel operators actually willing to see the cost and later use cost as a comparison for investment, for bigger prime investment?
That's a complex question to answer, and all such questions I tend to answer not objectively but emotionally. Can I approach it in a different, a slightly tangential way?
Please go ahead.
The question that we are frequently asked is, what's the hotel of tomorrow going to look like? That drives me to despair. The hotel of tomorrow is going to be exactly the same as the hotel of today and yesterday and the day before, because the last radical movement in hotel design, the very last one, was the combination of 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom, not 10 bedrooms and a bathroom down the corridor. That was the last. Everything else, valid though it is technology or fashion. Technology, obviously, you get a nice guy dressed with a black polo neck, holding an iPad and wearing Converse trainers checking you in. Okay, that's for today. It might change tomorrow, might go back to reception desk tomorrow. The other bits, the kind of picking up your point about carpets and curtains, that's all entirely fashion. And fashion is the enemy, the arch enemy of sustainability. My credo to our colleagues in the office is, design it once and then polish it and nurture it and love it forever. My example is the Four Seasons restaurant in the base of the Seagram building in New York, designed by Plattner and Mies van der Rohe in 1953, and it hasn't changed. Now, if we, in our little office and our people, if we could achieve that, I would be very, very happy. Sorry, I'm not really answering directly your question. Technology is there, and it does play a huge part. Of course it plays a huge part, not least of which, as we've just had that ghastly thing in London, in guest safety. But it was the other tangential answer to your question. It was Conrad Hilton who said the 3 most important things in hotel development are location, location, location.
Yes.
I now disagree entirely with that. It's service, service, service. Everything else is subordinate to service.
Okay, this is a new approach.
So I'm being rather
No,
emphatic here.
please, I like it. I think it's quite proper.
But
Mr. Balk.
going back to your question, if the investor are accepting new technologies, and everything, it's always the price segment. If they can afford this or not. We are not always Germans so we can afford us to this, and some of the investors not. But you, as an architect, you have to make a explanation of those things. And I never heard investor after this renovation he wouldn't accept this. The second thing that we have, at least in a region in ex-Yugoslavia, was compared to the others, is that we had standards before building standards, like a building physics standards that are pretty much close to Germans or Austrians or Europeans. And that's good because the Europe covers us with the high standards. I was working in America, I'm a licensed architect in America. I know that building physics is 0, compared to the European standards that, push the, buildings, our protection, our energy protection, maintenance, standards for all appliances that you have, fire code that we have, it's a comparable to way above about Americans. And you don't have to forget that even the labor law, which was in ex-socialist country, double standard as you have in the Western, it kept, So we have today labor rules that we have to cover also nationally, which are double standard that they have in Austria, for example. And in some cases, because I'm having for American fire, I have to have a 35 meters, but labor law-wise, I have to have 15 meters to the stairs, because of the labors. mates who are making. So it's a standards that we have to cover. So I think the quality of the buildings together is in this region pretty much high. You don't have to forget that we were also in the countries that people a lot went out of the country and they collect some knowledge, you know. So it's a skilled architects, you know, who understand what is most of those international standards I was working with. The half of the standards were covered by national standards because we adopted European Union standards, you know. Even sometimes the British standards are, less than we have. It's not that I'm criticizing the British standards, but it's also Americans, you know. So we have actually, our building is, for operational use, it's high operational value, actually, you know, by law, you know. Technically.
It is. Mr. Masabny, your experience in these matters, how can actually, or maybe to redesign a question a bit, how can architect help designing better operating, lesser costing hotel?
I understand your question that it's not standards, so how we can influence to do something over the
Exactly.
standard. And that I divide the world in three parts. If we have the owner and he's in the same time operator, then there's some possibilities to get higher standards and to convince that the investment in the moment will be recovered in the future. So not only with the investment, but also with, let's say, standing in the market with new technologies. The second is the investor and the operator is not the same. So it depends if the investor wants to keep the hotel or not. Mostly not in Western Europe, so there's developers who already sell their hotel in construction. So the developer is very difficult to convince to have additional investment because he will not get it back in normal way. So that's where, of course, it's a challenge to work with private investors. In that case, of course, like I said before, they have not so much professionality in general, but on the other side, we can influence more for the developers who are selling their hotels, and they, of course, keep only the standards of the operation group and the standards of the country. This is from my experience.
Ms. Nikic, you're, or Lindner, and you are rather an exception at this table. These are three, let's say, experienced hotel, I won't say designers, but planners, because it's much more complex than design. How is this project that you're doing right now going to change Lindner? In which way? What is actually the company goal now? Because something will have to be established as new way of working, or departments or whatever, to be able to cope with this project.
Yes.
And how are you thinking about the costs and the exploitation costs also?
To be honest, our brief doesn't cover exploitation costs, which is good for us. We already have to play with so many balls that we don't really want to have everything flying in the air. At this moment, our main target is the construction costs, which will, of course, be subject to some consideration of exploitation costs. That is quite normal. In our view, I think it could boil down to a couple of words: energy efficiency and building management system, BMS. Through these two roads, down these two roads, we are going to go venturing and do up to budget, according to a budget, this resort, which of course needs to operate in Montenegrin climate, which is known to have not as big temperature differences as, for example, here in Serbia, but quite considerable compared to, for example, Sicilian hotels. On the other hand, we have a rather interesting and special case of having 40 hectares, which is 40,000 square meters to play with,
No,
so to speak.
It's a bit more, 100,000.
Yes.
400,000, yeah.
Yes, 400,000. And it's for us a very interesting challenge to implement all buildings into one system, having them scattered around such a large property, which is one of the points with most risk for us for energy losses, for example. While on the other hand, building management system is going to help future operator control the losses, warm up buildings or rooms or cool them down in advance, etc., which is something that's already done all over the world. But going back to your question, how is this going to change the way Lindner operates? Well, it's going to change us hugely.
Okay, nice. You have said one thing, energy efficiency. It's a golden word of last couple of years. It means everything and actually means nothing until it's really defined.
Until it's something.
Yes, energy efficiency.
Unless, like the word sustainability,
Yeah.
which no one yet has offered any definition of.
Energy, yeah, the sustainability.
What does sustainability mean?
Exactly,
No one has a clue.
exactly. But it sounds
I
good.
do.
It sounds good.
But still you use it.
Sustainability equals longevity. That's the fundamental fact.
That is the question. I mean, the exploitation costs combined with longevity and combined with the initial costs of the hotel should actually produce a sustainable hotel.
Yes.
In a good, of course, in a good proportion. But the question is, I know some hotel operators and managers that do think like that, but if the initial cost is too high, they're not going to jump the gun and invest really so much because they plan to pay back their hotel after 10 years of exploitation and then to either resell it or earn money on it. It has to be rebuilt anyway after 10 years, so that's a normal lifespan of interior design and maybe even exterior design. Energy efficiency is something, it annoys me a bit, that's why I'm coming back to it. It is something that can be quite precise, but it's often being used as a cover for different mock-ups. We should be the ones that are treating the subject quite seriously and quite with a lot of attention because it can influence the building itself, it can influence its sustainability or the cost of the building in exploitation. But what is your experience with the energy efficiency and the ideas of the investors about it? Would you like to start now, Mr. Masabni now?
Yeah,
Please.
oh, you can start.
Yes.
Well, I have actually great experience, because we made actually with our consultant for mechanicals and electricals, we made several scenarios, and I put up the prices, for each of the concepts and the maintenance and everything, and every time, even for the earth pumps and those kind of things, even for the cooling from, system of with the sea or whatever. Owner, which is actually a Chilean group which has banks and I don't know, mines in Chile or whatever, they said, yes, we're going immediately, for this, even if it costs. The second is, of course, because we have very specific climate or whatever down in Croatia, it's sunny or whatever, they're always eager to understand that if you have put a protection on the glass, and even if you're doing architecture, which is, shaded and those kind of things, is going to reduce the capacity, you know, the air conditioner and those kind of things. So we are not looking only in technology, but only passive actions, how to reduce this, you know, because the people are not feeling comfortable in air conditions. So we have to catch all the recipes, you know, of the architecture. In the past, they were, you know, holding this energy or connection to the nature was much better. Sometimes you don't even need a money, but they understand, because the maintenance is, of course, the big issue.
Thank you. I had to give you a sign because we do not have much more time anymore. Quite short, Mr. Masabny.
I want to add that it's also depending on the country. So if you take Europe in the north, it's like normal and even moralic difficult if you don't want to think about energy and consumption. If you go to the south, you don't find anybody, or perhaps somebody, but not so much people who wants to be involved in this. You don't find the engineers, you don't find the state who want to help. So it's already in Europe not so
well, most of the time we are using Austrians for the high technology.
But don't you find that the initial investment, for example, in deep underground water pumps or different things that is quite expensive, can bring such savings later in small buildings, big buildings, doesn't matter, but the people are unwilling to go into critical or extreme, not solutions, this has been invented a long time ago, but it seems to them it's a major engineering achievement.
That's when the accountants take over.
Yeah.
Can I add?
Can I add something? Investment now versus economy in the future, or low investment now, and I don't care about the future.
Yeah, that's...
And the other thing is that you've mentioned, which I strongly support, traditional architecture offers us huge examples of how we can design our buildings that don't need the energy consumption that we often give them. Yeah. But hey, who am I to say?
Yeah, no, Alhambra, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have little water streams which cool the whole.
We have examples
whole
all over the history.
Yeah. I would like, since we're quite short, and I have been already in the morning told that I should not repeat my mistake from the morning. I would like to ask if there are any questions in our audience for our speakers. On the subject we have been discussing or something? No? Everybody quiet?
We can go now.
So in that case,
they're impressed.
we do still have 3 minutes, but I will take this time to thank you very much for attending this
but
panel.
I would maybe end
sorry?
Can I end his discussion, actually, or your discussion? It wasn't actually, in our case, it wasn't the operator who was happy to use new technology, but the owner who was, of course, maybe in this case, some company from Chile which knows what is going to bring this, and they were eager in the middle of the project to change the technology of the hotel, because we said it might be a good possibility, and they said immediately. So every time we are getting the highest technology actually for this. So if they have a sense.
Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you will enjoy further the panels at REBEC.
Thank you.
Thank you.